Lord of the Rings, a great trilogy of movies, great set of books. What a wonderful series. The Lord of the Rings is great. Today we're going to talk about the story that never really leaves them, The Lord of the Rings. I don't want to rush through it, I don't want to jump through it super quick, but I want to let it unfold slowly, and the way it feels when you actually spend time in this other world, Middle Earth. Because that's really what makes it different from a lot of other stories. It doesn't just tell you what happens, but it kind of lets you live there for a while and really has this strong world building. And the place to begin naturally is the Shire, not because it's the most dramatic place in the world, but because it's the most important. The Shire feels safe, grounded, almost untouched by the rest of the world. It's full of small routines, familiar paths, meals at predictable hours, and people who don't really think about anything beyond their own borders. That quiet simplicity in their life matters because without it, the journey wouldn't feel like a loss. You need to understand what's at stake before anyone even picks up the ring. Frodo doesn't just start as a hero in the way people often expect. He's not necessarily that powerful, he's not really trained, and he's not really trying to prove anything. He inherits something that he doesn't fully even understand and slowly realizes that his life is going to change whether he wants it to or not. This realization also doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in through conversations, through Gandalf's growing concern, through the sense that something unseen is moving closer and at a pretty quick pace too. Let's talk about Gandalf. Gandalf himself is interesting because he carries this quiet urgency. He's not panicked, but he knows the stakes long before anyone else does. When he confirms that is the One Ring, there's a shift in the tone that never really goes away. And from that point on, even the calmer moments feel like they're surrounded by something darker, something waiting to happen just outside of it. And then there's the decision to leave. It's not framed as a grand, heroic departure. It feels kind of uncertain, almost like reluctant, hesitant, I guess. Frodo leaves the Shire not because he wants this adventure, but because staying would bring danger to everything he cares about. That's a theme that keeps repeating throughout the story. People stepping forward not out of ambition, but out of responsibility and just trying to protect themselves and their livelihood. As the journey begins, the world starts to widen. The forests feel older, the roads less certain, and the sense of safety keeps fading more and more little by little. Especially with the presence of the Black Riders, it really introduces something entirely different. A kind of fear that isn't just physical but also psychological. They hunt. They represent the reach of Sauron without ever showing him directly, and that absence makes him even more unsettling. When Frodo meets Aragorn, or they meet him, they call him Strider at the time, there's another shift. Aragorn isn't introduced as the king that he later becomes, or even as someone important. He's just Strider, a ranger, someone who exists on edges of society. But there's a depth to him that becomes a lot clearer over time. And his story isn't about gaining power, but it's about accepting a role that he's been avoiding for so long. That quiet reluctance mirrors Frodo's in a different way, and it creates this kind of subtle connection between their paths. Rivendell, the elf city, it feels like a pause. That's a place where the weight of everything can be examined instead of just reacted to immediately. The Council of Elrond is one of those moments where the story slows down to think. Different perspectives come together, different histories, different fears, different groups of people, different races, and so on. They all point to the same conclusion, or at least most of them do, and that's that the ring can't be used, it has to be destroyed. And even then, no one really knows how that will work. The Fellowship itself isn't formed because that it's perfect or anything, but because it's very necessary. It's a group of individuals who don't all agree with each other fully, they don't all trust each other completely, and they definitely don't come from the same place, opinions, or same path, but they try to move forward anyway. That's part of what makes it feel real. It's not unity because everything is easy and we all have to work together, but it's unity because there's no alternative. We have to do this kind of thing. There's no choice. As they travel, the environment almost becomes like another character. The mountains they travel on resist them. The mines beneath them carry a sense of very ancient danger, and every step forward feels earned. Moria, the mines, in particular, is a turning point. It's not just about the physical challenge, but the loss that really happens there. Gandalf's fall in the mines of Moria changes the group in a way that can't really be undone. It removes the one figure who seemed to really fully guide everyone and really understand what was happening. And so it kind of leaves all the other members to have to start really figuring it out as they go. After that, the tone shifts again. There's less certainty, more fragmentation. The Fellowship doesn't stay intact. fully, and that's pretty important too. It's pretty neat because the story doesn't move forward as one big unified journey, but as several different paths that connect back to the same goals. Frodo and Sam's journey becomes a lot quieter, more internal. It's less about large-scale conflict and more about just their endurance. Sam especially becomes more significant the further they go, and to be honest, he's one of my favorite characters. Because at first he's just loyal, supportive, someone who follows Frodo because that's what he always has done. But over time, that loyalty turns into some real strength. He becomes the one really keeping things moving when everything else feels impossible and when things get really hard. And it's not dramatic, it's steady, it's consistent, it's almost quiet in the way that it holds everything together. Gollum, the one that travels with Sam and Frodo, he introduces something else entirely. He's not just this guide, he's not necessarily just an antagonist. He's kind of a reflection of what the ring does to people and does to them over time. Through him, you see the long-term effects of this obsession, addiction, the way it twists identity, the way it reduces everything to a single desire. And at the same time, there are moments where you can see what he used to be, which makes him a lot harder to dismiss. And a little aside, the Dark Overlord Sauron, I feel like in this story, he's not necessarily the villain completely, but it's the ring. Addiction. Addiction to the ring causes so many people's downfall and clouds people's judgment and causes all these issues in the world. It's not just the Dark Overlord Sauron. I found it very interesting, and it's a very good metaphor for addiction. It can really show you what addiction can do to people and how much it can change your judgment and your ability to think clearly. Back to the story. Meanwhile, the other paths, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Merry, Pippin, they expand the scope of the story. You start to see the larger world reacting. Kingdoms that are struggling, alliances that are very uncertain, people who have their own problems but are slowly drawn into the same conflict. Rohan, Gondor, these places aren't just settings, but they're also places that have a lot of histories, tensions, and a lot of their internal struggles. This is where Aragorn's arc becomes a lot more visible here. He moves from someone who avoids leadership to someone who needs to step into it. And this isn't some sudden change he makes, but rather that the situation really demands it. His growth isn't him just becoming something new, but it's him accepting who he's supposed to become. The battles that happen along the way are significant, but they're not the whole story. Even in the middle of the large-scale conflict, the focus often returns to individual choices. Who stands their ground, who retreats, who decides to keep going despite everything. That's where the emotional weight really sits. As for Frodo and Sam, as they get closer to Mordor, the journey becomes more exhausting, more stripped down. There's less conversation, less hope in a traditional sense, and more of a sense of just continuing because stopping really isn't an option. And their landscape really reflects that. It's very harsh, it's very empty and oppressive, kind of barren and desolate. Food is scarce, just survivability in general is very difficult. The ring itself becomes heavier, not exactly physically, but in the way it affects Frodo in his mind. It's not just an object he carries, but it's something that changes how he thinks, how he feels, how he sees the world, and just his overall willpower, you could say. This gradual shift is very important because it shows that even the strongest intentions or people who are very resistant to the ring can still be worn down by it pretty strongly and over time. By the time they reach Mount Doom, it doesn't feel like a super triumphant arrival. It feels like the end of something that has drained them. It's taken everything out of them. In the final moment, Frodo's inability to actually let go of the ring is one of the most honest parts of the story and really shows how bad addiction can get. It doesn't present him as perfect either, which is very neat because a lot of protagonists have that issue in fiction. It shows that the burden was too much for him, that no one person could carry it without being affected, no matter how pure, no matter how much willpower. And then Gollum's role really comes back into focus. His presence and obsession, his final act against Frodo, it all ties together in a way that feels inevitable. It's not very surprising. The ring is destroyed, but not in a clean, controlled way. It happens through a series of choices, consequences, moments that build on each other, and a whole fight, pretty much a whole brawl. After that, the story doesn't rush to an end either. It takes time to return, and a lot of people say the series has 4 different endings, or it has a dozen different endings, because It doesn't rush to an end. It really does take a while. A lot of people's stories wrap up, and so it has numerous different endings, and people have always said that. It's a joke in the community. But basically, this is their time to show what's changed, what's been lost, and what can never go back to the way it was. The Shire is probably a little bit different. Frodo is definitely different. And even though the immediate threat is gone and they have vanquished it, the impact and the memory it leaves behind remains and will probably always remain. Frodo's departure, while very sad, is quiet. It's almost understated, but it carries a lot of weight. It acknowledges that some experiences don't really resolve neatly, and that even if you come out as the victor, these journeys can leave marks that don't fade. And instead of forcing a sense of closure, it allows that complexity to exist. And to me, that's what really makes The Lord of the Rings endure. It's not just the scale or the world building or the iconic moments, it's the way it treats its characters, the way it allows them to struggle, to fail, to continue anyway. It doesn't rush them, and it doesn't simplify what they go through either. When you step back and look at the whole thing, it's less about a single victory and more about the accumulation of all these decisions. Choosing to leave, choosing to trust each other, choosing to keep going. None of those moments feel overwhelming on their own, but together they really shape everything in the story. And maybe that's why it stays with people, because beneath the fantasy, beneath the scale and the distance from our own world, it feels familiar, kind of in a quieter way. Not necessarily in the details, but the choices, the people, the persistence, how people work together, the sense of carrying something difficult and continuing anyway. So when people return to it, it's not always for the same reason. Sometimes it's the comfort of the Shire and people just want to rewatch it. Sometimes it's the tension of the journey they want to watch. Sometimes they want to see the relationships between characters. But whatever the reason, it holds up because it was never just about reaching the end, but it was about everything that happened along the way. That quote. And the way those moments were allowed to unfold without being rushed or simplified. And even after it's over, it doesn't really feel finished. It lingers a little, the same way the journey itself does, as something that doesn't need to be constantly revisited to still be in the present. It kind of stays there quietly, the way Middle-earth always seems to. Overall, I think the writing is great. I think Peter Jackson did great with The Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit is a bit of a different story, but The Lord of the Rings was great. And I can't help myself but revisit it quite often.